when I say the name George R.R. Martin, I know exactly what floods your mind right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Right. You think of massive, just sprawling epics. You think of political backstabbing, dozens of interconnected families vying for power.
Dragons, obviously.
Exactly, dragons. And just this absolute brutal realism disguised as high fantasy.
Yeah, it's the definition of a literary juggernaut. Swords, fire, political machinations, and honestly, a deeply cynical view of human nature. That is basically the George R.R. Martin brand.
It is. But what if I told you that long before he wrote those global phenomena, like way back in 1980, he published a story that is completely different?
Like total 180.
Yeah, a piece of literature that just strips away the sprawling continents and the, dozens of rival kings, and instead it focuses on this tightly woven, haunting, and surprisingly dark fairy tale.
Which is such a departure for him.
It really is. It's called The Ice Dragon. It was originally published in 1980, and then later it was brought to just incredible visual life with these illustrations by Luis Royo.
And it is a remarkable departure, like you said.
Right.
I mean, sure, it features dragons in a medieval style setting, but the tone is entirely distinct.
Yeah, it's not what you expect.
Not at all. It is an incredibly poignant, almost minimalist narrative. At its core, this isn't really a story about fantasy world building.
Right, it's much more intimate.
Exactly. It is a deeply psychological text. It functions almost as a fable about human resilience.
And that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to explore this beautifully tragic story from the inside out. We're going to unpack the heavy themes of alienation, the way the visceral horrors of war inevitably bleed into childhood innocence, and ultimately the heartbreaking cost of healing from profound trauma.
Because, I mean, in Martin's universe, even in a fairy tale, healing is never free.
No, definitely not.
There is always a transaction, right?
Yeah.
A literal and figurative sacrifice involved when we transition from a state of protective numbness back into a state of feeling and empathy.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to set the stage for you, the listener, so you understand the exact parameters of the world we are stepping into. So the center of this entire universe, like the gravitational pull of the whole story, is this little girl named Adara.
Right, Adara.
And the text immediately establishes her as a winter child. She was born during the absolute worst freeze in living memory.
And that's saying something for this world.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about a freeze so severe that even the oldest person in the area, this neighbor named Old Laura, who basically serves as the village's unofficial historian, she had never seen anything like it.
Yeah, the environmental conditions of her birth are paramount to understanding her character.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't just a chilly night.
No, it was deadly.
The story explicitly details how the cold physically invaded the space. It crept under the door frames, it frosted the windows, and despite this massive roaring fire Adara's father built in the hearth, the cold overpowered the heat.
Which is just such a powerful image.
It is. And here is the tragic anchor of the narrative, right? That freezing night took the life of Adara's mother. She died in childbirth.
Yeah, but the mythos of the family, it goes even deeper than the mother's death. The belief, which is just woven into the fabric of Adara's identity from day one, is that the cold didn't just fill the room. It physically entered Adara while she was still in the womb.
Like it infected her.
Exactly.
Right.
When she was born, she didn't just feel the chill, she was the chill. Her skin was pale blue and literally icy to the touch.
It is crucial to understand that Martin is blurring the line between literal biology and psychological metaphor here.
Oh, for sure.
In the reality of the story, the winter touched her, it marked her, and it claimed her. She never warmed up in all the years that followed. But structurally,
From like a literary standpoint.
right, structurally, it operates as an externalization of internal trauma. The mother's death and the agonizing cold are inextricably linked in the family's shared history.
So we move from the premise of her tragic birth to how this physical coldness manifests as she grows up. Because it dictates her entirely.
It dictates everything, her appearance, her psychology, her family dynamic.
Right, and the physical traits are striking. She has this pale skin, incredibly blonde hair, wide, clear blue eyes, and she is just always icy to the touch.
And that physical chill translates directly into a profound emotional distance. The narrative really emphasizes her detachment. Adara is a child who completely subverts the expectations of childhood.
Like, completely.
She never cries, she never throws tantrums, she rarely smiles, and on the rare occasions it's exclusively in the dead of winter.
I want to focus on a specific, incredibly arresting anecdote from the source material that illustrates just how deep this detachment goes. Because it's one thing to say a child is quiet, right? It's another to read this scene. When Adara is 5 years old, she's walking outside in the snow, and she steps on a board hidden beneath a snowbank.
And this is just brutal.
It is. Embedded in that board is a rusty nail, and her foot comes down so hard that the nail goes clear through her foot.
Right through the flesh and out the top.
Yeah. Now, I want you to picture a normal 5-year-old in that scenario. That is a moment of sheer, ear-piercing panic.
Oh, total hysterics.
The physical agony, the shock, the sight of the blood, it would induce a hysterical reaction. The screaming alone would be deafening.
But the text specifically notes her lack of reaction. Adara doesn't scream.
Nothing.
She doesn't weep. She doesn't even call out for help. She calmly and methodically pulls her foot loose from the board, sliding it off the nail.
Just writing that makes me cringe.
I know, it's so visceral. And then she turns around and walks all the way back to the farmhouse. She leaves a literal, bright red trail of blood across the pristine white snow.
And when she finds her father, she doesn't run to him for comfort, which is what any kid would do. She simply states, in this completely flat, emotionless effect, "Father, I hurt myself."
That scene is the linchpin for understanding Adara's psychological state. Pain, especially for a child, is supposed to be a signal.
Like an alarm bell.
Exactly. Crying is a biological imperative designed to alert caregivers that the child is in danger and needs soothing. Adara has completely severed that communicative bond.
But why? I mean, I'm looking at this as a stark representation of dissociation. It's like she's living inside a sensory deprivation tank built of ice, you know?
That's a great way to put it.
If she doesn't feel the physical cold, she doesn't have to feel the physical pain, and by extension, she doesn't have to feel the emotional pain of her environment. But what is causing the need for that fortress in the first place?
Well, to answer that, we have to examine the family dynamic, particularly her father, John, because a child doesn't build a fortress of that magnitude unless they're defending against something overwhelming.
Right. Kids don't just shut down for no reason.
No, they don't. And John is described as this gruff, hardworking farmer, a massive bear of a man who is inherently tied to the summer. He is a creature of the sun, sweating in the fields from dawn to dusk.
And he clearly knows how to be a warm, engaged parent to his other children. That's the contrast that makes Adara's situation so heartbreaking.
Exactly. We see Jeff, the older brother, who is insatiably curious. He constantly pesters John with questions, and John meets that curiosity with patience, smiles, and stories.
He's a good dad to Jeff.
He is. And then you have Terry, the older sister. She is golden-haired, freckled, very social, and shamelessly flirtatious with the local boys. And John is full of hugs and hearty laughter for her. He teaches her to cook. He engages with her vibrantly.
So he is present. But with Adara, it is an entirely different reality. The only time he ever touches her, the only time he embraces her, is in the dead of winter. And these aren't joyful hugs.
Not at all.
The text describes him wrapping his massive arms around her small, cold body, crushing her to his chest, and just violently sobbing. Fat, wet tears running down his face.
He only embraces her when the physical environment, the winter, reminds him of the night his wife died. Adara is not a daughter to him in those moments.
No, she's a reminder.
She's an artifact of his grief.
He is projecting an unbearable amount of unresolved trauma directly onto a toddler. Adara is literally functioning as a living tombstone for his wife. But here is where I want to push back, or rather ask for clarification.
Sure, go ahead.
Does a child that young actually recognize the weight of her father's pain? Or is she truly oblivious inside that ice tank? Because 5-year-olds don't typically grasp the nuances of generational trauma, right?
Well, they may not have the vocabulary for it, but they absolutely absorb the emotional reality of it. And Martin explicitly removes any doubt about Adara's awareness here.
How so?
The text provides this devastating memory. When Adara was only 4 years old, she was awake late at night and overheard a conversation between her father and her uncle Hal. They were drinking wine, and Hal, trying to be the voice of reason, tells John that he needs to be kinder to Adara. He tells John that he cannot blame the child for her mother's death.
Overhearing that at 4 years old, I mean, that is catastrophic to a child's psychological development.
And John's response seals the damage. His voice is thick with wine and sorrow, and he says, "I loved her best of all, my little winter child. But she has never loved back. There is nothing in her for me or you, any of us. She is such a cold little girl." And then he just breaks down weeping.
Let me stop you there, because the sheer unfairness of that statement is staggering.
It's incredibly unfair.
He is blaming a 4-year-old for not loving him back in the way he requires. He is expecting a toddler to emotionally regulate him, the adult, to fix his grief over his dead wife.
Yeah, reversing the roles completely.
And because she can't, because she is literally a baby, he labels her as defective. She is such a cold little girl.
It is a profound failure of parenting, rooted in unhealed trauma. And Adara is lying in her bed in the dark, absorbing every single word of this. The story meticulously notes that she didn't cry when she was 4 and heard it, and she didn't cry when she was 6, and finally possessed the cognitive ability to fully understand what it meant.
Because the ice tank was already built. That moment didn't create the alienation, it cemented it. It
Yeah.
confirmed her internal bias that she was fundamentally broken in her family's eyes.
Precisely. I mean, if your primary caregiver defines you as a void, as something cold and unlovable, and if their only physical affection is a suffocating performance of grief, you learn to survive by becoming exactly what they accuse you of being.
You become numb.
You become numb.
So if the house is a site of emotional starvation, where does a child find nourishment? This brings us to the things Adara does connect with: the magical ecology of her world and the introduction of a looming external threat. And the bridge between her isolated family life and the wider world is Uncle Hal.
Uncle Hal is a brilliant narrative device. He really is.
Mhm.
He is the catalyst that forces the broader macro-level conflicts of Martin's world onto this microscopic, isolated farm. Hal is the king's dragon rider.
He is the epitome of the wider world. He comes visiting every summer. He's described as tall, slender, with a noble face, wearing this brilliant green and gold uniform of the king's army. And he brings the ultimate summer energy.
Oh, absolutely.
He brings toys from the city, crystal, gold jewelry, expensive wine. He flirts with Terry and makes her blush. He tells Jeff thrilling war stories. He is vibrant, loud, and alive.
He represents the intoxicating but ultimately chaotic and destructive energy of fire in summer. He rides a green war dragon named Brimstone.
Which is such a telling detail. You don't name a creature Brimstone unless it is a weapon of mass destruction.
Exactly. It's a military asset. But for all of Hal's good nature, his genuine attempts to coax a smile out of Adara with gifts and hugs, Adara absolutely hates him.
Because to her, Hal means summer. He brings the heat. And Adara loathes summer. While everyone else in the family is busy enjoying the heat, the vibrancy, the stories, and the gifts, Adara retreats completely.
She just checks out.
Yeah, she is simply enduring the heat, waiting for her season to return. And when winter finally does come, her behavior changes drastically.
She becomes an active participant in her environment.
She does. She engages in this deeply solitary, almost architectural play. She goes to the far corners of the fields, away from the farmhouse, away from the gaze of her family, and she builds these elaborate, tall, white castles out of snow and ice.
Using icicles for spires and everything?
Yes, icicles for guard posts. She creates her own kingdom.
What's fascinating here is the ecosystem she cultivates around these ice castles. Martin introduces elements of magical realism that perfectly mirror Adara's internal state. She surrounds herself with creatures that share her elemental alignment. The source specifically details her interaction with ice lizards.
Oh, I am obsessed with the concept of the ice lizards.
They're great, right?
They are these tiny, fragile blue creatures that wriggle out of their burrows in the ground at the very first frost. They just skim in dirt across the safest of the snow. And the text provides this brilliant contrast using her brother, Jeff.
Right, with his warm hands.
Yeah, Jeff is this inquisitive, warm-blooded kid. He tries to catch the lizards just to look at them out of pure curiosity, but his hands are so naturally warm that when he holds them for even a few seconds, the lizards literally melt, burn, and die in his palms.
It's a microscopic, tragic representation of the danger that human warmth poses to the creatures of winter. Jeff harbors no malice toward the lizards, His very dialogical nature is simply toxic to them.
But Adara's hands are cool. She's the only one who can interact with this ecosystem without destroying it. She can hold them safely. She lies down in the damp snow and lets them crawl over her face. She wears them hidden in her blonde hair. They are essentially her courtiers in her ice castle.
It is a beautiful image, but we really must recognize how incredibly isolating it is. She has constructed a fantasy world where she is the sovereign, and where her coldness, the very trait that alienates her from her human family, is transformed into a superpower.
Right.
It is the necessary condition that keeps her only companions alive.
It reframes her trauma response as an evolutionary advantage. In the world of humans, her coldness is a defect. In the world of winter, it is a virtue. And this localized miniature ecology of winter perfectly prepares us and Adara for the grandest manifestation of her alienation. The creature that the entire story is named after, the titular ice dragon.
Ah, yes. The ice dragon is a masterclass in elemental world building. To understand its impact, we have to contrast it with the war dragons we've already met, like Hell's Brimstone.
Because they are very different beasts.
Completely different. The text establishes war dragons as 5 times the size of a horse, covered in tough green scales, reeking of sulfur, and bound by leather harnesses to serve human riders.
They are essentially biological fighter jets.
That's a perfect way to describe them. But the ice dragon is something else entirely. It defies categorization. The physical description alone is breathtaking. It is massive, half again the size of Hal's war dragon.
It's huge.
It is crystalline white, so intensely white that it almost appears blue in the shadows. It is covered entirely in hoarfrost, so that when it moves, its skin physically crackles like the hard crust on top of deep snow.
Just the sound design of that in your head is amazing.
Right. It has these translucent blue bat wings, so sheer that if you look up, you can see the moon and the stars right through them. And its teeth are described as 3 rows of jagged, lethal icicles.
And its breath is the most significant departure from fantasy tropes. It doesn't breathe fire.
No, not at all.
It breathes death, quiet, and absolute cold. When it flies over the forest, its breath freezes trees instantly until the wood shatters from the rapid temperature drop. It extinguishes fires effortlessly. As the story notes, it leaves a trail of profound, deadly stillness. It is the pure embodiment of the sublime.
I want to pause on that word. Yeah, because you used sublime earlier in our notes, and I want to make sure we're using that term correctly here. Colloquially, people might say a slice of cake is sublime, or a hotel view is sublime, meaning just very good.
Right, like, oh, this soup is sublime.
Exactly. But in a literary philosophical sense, we're talking about Edmund Burke's definition, aren't we?
Right.
The intersection of awe and absolute terror.
Yes, exactly. In romantic literature and aesthetic theory, the sublime refers to a greatness beyond all possibility of measurement, calculation, or imitation. It is an aesthetic quality that inspires profound awe, but is inextricably linked with deep terror and insignificance.
It's a very specific feeling.
It's the feeling you get standing at the edge of a massive, dark ocean cliff during a raging hurricane, or looking into the abyss of the Grand Canyon. It is breathtakingly beautiful, but you are acutely aware that it is utterly indifferent to you, and it could destroy you without a second thought.
That perfectly describes the ice dragon. It is not a pet. It is an untamed, indifferent force of nature. Hal even warns the family, telling them terrifying stories about how people lose fingers and toes to frostbite just by accidentally brushing against an ice dragon.
They are forces of pure entropy.
Yeah. They can't be trained, they can't be broken with whips, they reject harnesses, and they serve no king.
Yet Adara, our little winter child, defies all of this. At just 4 years old, she approaches this manifestation of the sublime. She takes her heavy winter glove off, reaches out with her bare, pale hand, and strokes the frost on its side.
Which should cost her some fingers, according to the lore.
Right, but it doesn't. She even leans forward and kisses its wing, a kiss that literally hurts her lips because the cold is so intense.
And then, at age 5, the impossible happens. She rides it.
Without a harness, without a saddle, without a whip to command it.
She simply climbs up its jagged, icy back, clings to its freezing neck, and the dragon launches into the sky. They soar so high that the ground disappears beneath them.
She flies over her father's farm, looking down. She sees her brother Jeff looking up in absolute paralyzed terror. And Adara's reaction isn't fear. She just laughs. This bright, crisp, tinkling laugh that sounds like breaking ice.
Notice the stark dichotomy Martin is painting here. Hal rides his green dragon as a tool of the state.
Yeah.
He is a soldier, an instrument of a geopolitical war, bound by duty just as his dragon is bound by a harness.
Right.
Adara rides the ice dragon in complete, wild, unadulterated freedom. They are kindred spirits.
The dragon doesn't serve her.
No, it accepts her. It allows her presence because she is of the exact same essence. She is as emotionally detached from the messy, warm-blooded human world as the dragon is biologically detached from it.
But that beautiful icy isolation is a bubble. And as we know in George R.R. Martin's stories, bubbles always burst. You can't build a wall high enough to keep out the real world forever. This brings us to the encroachment of reality, which, in this narrative, takes the form of a creeping, relentless war.
The war in the north. For all of Adara's early life, it has merely been background noise, a distant rumble of thunder that adults occasionally whisper about. But as she grows from 4 to 5 to 7 years old, The storm gets closer.
The perimeter is shrinking.
The psychological distance between her safe farm and the front lines is shrinking rapidly.
Right. Every single summer when Uncle Hal visits, the news gets demonstrably worse. The king's forces are losing. The enemy is advancing steadily southward. They have twice as many dragon riders, better tactics, more ferocity. And Hal, shifting from the fun uncle to the desperate soldier, starts pushing John to abandon the farm.
He knows what's coming.
He urges his brother to sell the land, pack up the children, and move far south before the winter traps them. Or worse, before the enemy vanguard overtakes them.
And John's reaction to Hal's warnings is deeply illustrative of his overarching character pathology. He stubbornly, aggressively refuses. His reasoning is entirely rooted in the past. He tells Hal, "This is my land, I was born here, our parents are buried here, and Bella too. I want to lie beside her when I go."
I am really struggling with John here. I really am. I want to construct an argument against him because reading this, I'm looking at John as a case study in negligent parenting driven by pathological grief.
It's hard to defend him.
Is his refusal to leave an act of bravery a noble stand for his heritage? Or is it a toxic, fatal attachment to a ghost? He is essentially anchoring his entire living family to a sinking ship because his favorite painting is in the cabin.
That's a powerful analogy.
He is willing to risk the lives of Jephthah and Adara just to stay near the physical dirt where his dead wife is buried.
It's a harsh assessment, but from a psychological standpoint, it is entirely accurate. John is paralyzed by his grief. He cannot move forward, literally or metaphorically. He is weaponizing his loyalty to the past against the future of his children.
Exactly.
Hal represents pragmatism, survival, and adapting to new realities. John represents an inability to process loss. He would quite literally rather die with the past than live in an unfamiliar future.
And the consequences of that stubbornness, that refusal to adapt, become horrifyingly real very quickly. And here is where I was truly shocked by the source material. Martin does not sugarcoat the reality of the impending violence, even though this is technically packaged as a children's fairy tale.
No, he really leans into the horror.
The imagery he uses to describe the refugees fleeing south on the King's Highway is brutal.
It marks a profound, jarring shift in the tone of the book. We move from this ethereal, magical realism of sparkling ice castles and majestic dragons directly into stark, visceral, almost Goya-esque anti-war literature.
Adara stands by the side of the dirt road near her farm and watches the retreat. In the beginning, it's just organized columns of troops marching past. But over the weeks, it rapidly devolves into a waking nightmare.
The structure completely collapses.
The discipline breaks down entirely. She sees a man with no eyes supporting a man with only one leg. She sees men with their heads literally split open by axes, the wounds wrapped in dirty, bloody rags. She smells the horrifying stench of the bodies, swollen, greenish corpses just abandoned in the ditches by the side of the road because the survivors are too weak or too panicked to bury them.
Which is just an insane image for a kid's book.
Right. And her father and the local villagers actually have to go out with shovels to cover them up to stop the spread of disease.
It is an assault on the senses. But the most affecting detail for Adara, the image that truly pierces her consciousness, are the burned men.
Yes. The text describes men whose skin is completely black and seared, peeling off their bodies in strips. Men who have lost limbs, who have had their faces melted away by dragonfire. Tamari, her older sister, goes down to the inn and finds out from the retreating officers that the enemy has an overwhelming, insurmountable number of dragons.
And this detail is vital for Adara's psychological arc. She is observing all of this devastation. Her internal sanctuary of cold, quiet, and emotional stillness is being actively threatened by the ultimate chaotic heat dragon fire and war.
The polar opposite of everything she is.
Precisely. The reality of the adult world, which is driven by passion, violence, and destruction, is marching right to her literal doorstep. The dissonance between her silent ice castles and the moaning, rotting victims of fire is deafening.
And despite all of this, despite the split heads and the burned men, John still will not leave.
Unbelievable.
He just starts drinking more wine, constantly looking up at the sky with dread while he stubbornly works his fields. Which brings us to the inevitable breaking point, the impossible choice.
The collision of trauma and immediate mortal danger.
Hal arrives in the dead of summer, but the vibrant, dashing Uncle Hal is gone. He looks sallow, grim, and exhausted. And he is not leading a victorious squadron. He only has 3 other dragons with him.
That's it. Just 3.
His own mount, Brimstone, the dragon we met earlier, is in terrible shape. It has a charred wing, it's missing scales, and it's leaning heavily to one side, clearly deeply wounded from battle. Hal delivers the final ultimatum. The enemy is only 3 days away.
They're out of time.
The vanguard of enemy dragon riders might be there by tomorrow. Hal is staying behind to fight the rearguard action, which is essentially a military suicide mission designed purely to buy the retreating civilians a few extra hours.
He begs his brother one last desperate time to flee. But when John still hesitates, or rather, when they both realize that John's hesitation has cost them the window to escape safely on foot, Hal makes a devastating, horrifying offer.
The logistics of survival. Hal says he can take one child. Just one.
Just one.
Brimstone is too weak, too injured to carry the weight of an adult or even multiple children. He can save one life. John immediately says to take Tiri, his golden child, but Hal shakes his head and says she's almost full grown. She's too heavy for the wounded dragon to lift.
It's such cold mathematical reality of war.
They look at each other with absolute bottomless despair, and they come to an agreement. Hal will take Adara. She is the youngest, the smallest, and the lightest.
Now we have to pause and analyze this moment from Adara's perspective. The family, in their minds, is offering her the ultimate gift salvation. They are choosing her to survive the impending apocalypse. But how does Adara, the winter child, react to this offer of rescue?
Here's where it gets really interesting. She looks at her father and she looks at her Uncle Hal very seriously. Her face is perfectly still, and she just says, no.
Simple as that.
And then she turns and sprints away, diving into the tall wheat fields.
She completely, unequivocally rejects their salvation.
She evades them. They chase her. John, Hal, and Jeff all run into the fields shouting her name, but she's small, she knows the land perfectly, and she's fast. They lose her in the stalks. She climbs high up into an ancient oak tree and hides in the dense branches.
Just waiting them out.
She sits there for hours while her family searches the fields below with lanterns, their voices calling out into the dark. And as she's hiding, surrounded by the terror of the impending war and her desperate family, she isn't crying. She isn't terrified of the enemy dragons. She's sitting in the branches, dreaming of the ice dragon and the mythical land of always winter.
This raises a profoundly important question regarding her psychology. Why does she run? This isn't just a childish tantrum or simple rebellion. For Adara, going south with Hal means abandoning the cold. It means abandoning her ice dragon. But more fundamentally, it means abandoning her true self, the identity she has constructed to survive.
Right.
In her mind, her family are the aliens, the warmth they offer, the fire of the South, the chaotic world of human emotions. That is death to her. She would rather freeze in her fantasy, secure in her emotional isolation, than live in the burning, unpredictable reality of her human family.
It is the ultimate flight response. When faced with the trauma of the approaching fire, she retreats by seeking out her deepest, most ingrained coping mechanism. She waits until the lanterns disappear, climbs down from the tree, and runs through the dark to an icy, secluded cave by the river to hide.
Her safe space.
She curls up, making herself as small as possible, hoping the cold will protect her, and miraculously, even in the deadly, oppressive heat of the summer night, her safe space responds to her need. She wakes up to the feeling of a cold wind blowing into the cave. Frost is forming on the rocks. She climbs out of the entrance, and there it is. The ice dragon is waiting for her.
The magnitude of this cannot be overstated. The ice dragon has come for her, braving the summer heat, which is actively, physically harming it. The text provides incredible descriptive details. When the dragon breathes on the summer grass, the green blades snap off like fragile glass, but the dragon itself looks smaller.
Like it's melting.
It is diminished, shrinking, literally melting due to the ambient temperature. Yet, despite the biological imperative to stay in the frozen north, it came to her.
Adara runs up its crystalline wing, throws her arms around its freezing neck, and begs it to take her away. She pleads with it to fly her to the land of always winter. She promises to build it the grandest ice castle, to take care of it forever. She just wants to escape the pain, the heat, and the complexity of being human.
And the dragon obliges.
It understands. It takes off its massive translucent wings, beating the hot air, flying north, away from the farm, away from the war, away from everything.
She has her escape. She has successfully severed all ties to humanity and the pain it inevitably brings. She is finally completely free.
But then we reach the climax. Fire meets ice. Because as they are flying away, soaring higher and higher towards safety, Adara does something fatal to her isolation. She looks back.
The classic, tragic mistake.
And what she sees over her shoulder shatters that frozen shell forever.
She sees the dawn breaking over the horizon. But it's not just the sun illuminating the sky. It's the enemy vanguard arriving.
Right. 3 massive dark dragons cresting the horizon. One the color of rusted iron, one the color of dry dark blood, and one coal black. They are ridden by men in stark orange and black armor. And from the sky, Adara witnesses Hal's tragic last stand.
So hard to read.
Hal flies up to meet them on his wounded green dragon, Brimstone. He tries valiantly to take the black dragon head-on, whipping Brimstone desperately, but his dragon's fire is pale, short, and weak. The three enemy dragons easily outmaneuver him.
It's not even a contest.
They surround him in the air, open their jaws, and breathe fire simultaneously. Hal and Brimstone are engulfed. They just fall from the sky, a burning, tumbling mass, crashing directly into John's dry wheat field, setting it ablaze.
It is a brutally swift, unromanticized defeat. And Adara watches this entire sequence unfold from high above, flying away on her ice dragon. She sees the enemy dragons descend, their dark wings blotting out the sun as they land at her family's farm.
And then she hears it. Across the vast distance of the sky, cutting through the wind and the crackle of the frost, she hears her father scream.
That scream is the psychological anchor that violently pulls her back to humanity.
I want to slow down and dissect this moment because it is the turning point of the entire narrative. She is literally on the dragon, flying toward her ultimate fantasy of safety and numbness. But hearing her father's raw, unfiltered scream of pure terror, something profound breaks inside her. Hot tears run down her cheek.
Hot tears.
And Martin emphasizes that these aren't just poetic tears, they are literally hot. Where they fall on the ice dragon's back, they sizzle and burn small, deep pockmarks into the frost. She pulls her hand away and stares at the physical marks her newfound warmth is leaving on the creature of winter.
The thermodynamics of the scene mirror her internal state. She is feeling. For the first time in her life, the ice within her is melting, generating heat.
But I have to push back on the why of it all. Why does that specific scream turn her around? We spent this entire deep dive establishing that she has never shown affection for her family. Her father has been a source of trauma. He has only ever cried on her, burdened her with his grief, called her a cold little girl. Why doesn't she just keep flying? What breaks the spell here?
Well, if we look closely at the psychological architecture we established earlier, Adara's coldness was a defense mechanism against her father's chronic, suffocating grief. But it was also a defense against feeling her own lack of agency. When she hears him scream in the wheat field, it is fundamentally different from the weeping she is used to.
How so?
It's not the melancholic sobbing of a man mourning his past. It is the immediate, visceral, throat-shredding terror of a man facing his execution in the present. In that exact moment, the threat shifts from chronic emotional neglect to immediate, fatal physical violence. The defensive dissociation shatters because dissociation only works against internal or chronic psychological pain.
That is such a good point.
It is completely useless against immediate physical annihilation. The sudden realization that her father is about to be burned alive violently ignites her innate human empathy, which had been buried under years of ice.
That makes perfect sense. The armor cracks because the nature of the attack changes. She is no longer defending against his sadness. She's reacting to his impending death. She leans down, presses her face to the dragon's freezing neck, and begs, "Turn back! Oh, please, dragon, take me back! Help me!" And the text notes that her voice is thin, small, and entirely human.
And the ice dragon.
Despite every law of its nature,
It turns.
it actually turns.
And this turn represents a monumental sacrifice. We must clearly understand the elemental ecology Martin has set up. The ice dragon is a creature of pure, absolute cold. It is deeply, fatally sensitive to heat. By banking its wings and turning back, diving directly into the blistering summer heat and the localized inferno created by 3 fire-breathing war dragons, the ice dragon is knowingly committing suicide.
Yes, the text makes this explicit. Adara hears, echoing in her own mind, the wild keening of its grief. The dragon is ancient and intelligent. It knows exactly what it is doing. It is consciously choosing to die out of love for this little girl.
Which is incredible.
It is the ultimate act of devotion, subverting its own elemental nature to save her human attachments.
And so begins the final confrontation. Fire versus ice.
The battle is epic, but it's not glorious. It is incredibly frantic, brutal, and desperate. The ice dragon swoops in like a blizzard. The coal-black dragon is on the ground, tearing at the farmhouse. The ice dragon dives and unleashes its breath. The concentrated stream of absolute zero hits the black dragon's left wing, and the biological tissue instantly freezes solid and shatters into 1,000 pieces.
Just shatters.
The black dragon and its rider collapse dead.
One down. But the dynamic changes immediately because the other two are airborne and they have the elemental advantage.
The rust dragon and the blood-colored dragon attack in tandem. The air around the farm is shimmering with intense heat, thick with the smell of sulfur and burning wheat. The bare-chested rider on the blood dragon makes a fatal error. He flies too close.
Big mistake.
Huge. The ice dragon banks and blasts him directly. The text is so vivid and horrifying here. The intense cold hits the man. His bare chest turns deep blue instantly. The moisture in the air condenses violently on him, freezing him completely solid midair. He screams, dies instantly, and his frozen body tumbles out of his harness. The ice dragon then meets that dragon's column of fire with a blast of its own cold, overwhelming the flame and killing the blood dragon as well.
But the cost is adding up with terrifying speed. The ice dragon is taking severe, irreversible damage. The intense ambient heat and the proximity to the fire are causing it to literally shrivel. The text describes water flying off the dragon's body like heavy rain every time it beats its wings.
It's raining itself to death.
It is melting mid-flight.
And then the final blow. The rust dragon manages to get behind them. It unleashes a massive, sustained blast of fire directly into the ice dragon's back, and the ice dragon's right wing is just
Gone. Vapor.
It doesn't break. It melts instantly into steam and water. Destroyed. The ice dragon plummets from the sky, crashing heavily into the burning wheat field. Adara is thrown clear by the impact, bruised and battered, but whole.
The sublime force of nature is broken. Its long, crystalline neck sinks wearily to the scorched dirt.
The last enemy rider, the one on the rust dragon, swoops in low. He is roaring with triumph, brandishing his lance, ready to finish them off. And the ice dragon musters its strength and raises its head one last time. It lets out this terrible, thin, profoundly melancholy cry. Martin describes it as sounding like the north wind howling through an empty white castle.
That imagery is just beautiful.
And it exhales one final, smoking, blue-white stream of cold. It is a blast, completely devoid of malice. It is just full of snow, stillness, and the end of all living things. The enemy rider flies right into the center of it, freezes solid instantly, and crashes into the dirt.
And then absolute silence falls over the ruined farm.
The battle is over. Adara scrambles to her feet and runs as fast as she can through the smoke back to the remains of the house. She finds Terry, who survived the attack. Together, they pulled Jeff from the rubble, and they frantically untie their father, who had been bound by the soldiers.
So they all survived.
Terry is weeping, cleaning his wounds, and when John opens his eyes, coughing on the smoke, he looks up and sees Adara, and he smiles. A genuine, present smile. And Adara throws her arms around him. She hugs him very hard, burying her face in his chest, and she finally cries for him. Not the hot tears of panic from the dragon's back, but real, heavy, sustained tears of emotional connection.
The winter child is gone. The psychological dam is broken, and the numbness is washed away.
They escape into the night, heading south on foot, leaving the ruined farm behind. But Martin doesn't end the story right there in the ashes. We get this profound, incredibly bittersweet aftermath that recontextualizes the entire journey.
We learn that the family spends 3 years living in the South. Sean finds work as a laborer for another farmer, slowly saving his money. And despite losing his brother Hal, despite losing his precious generational land and his wife's grave, John is at peace. He tells Adara, "It is all right. I have my daughter back."
That's a huge shift for him.
Right, and Adara herself has completely transformed. She smiles, she laughs freely, and she weeps when she is sad, just like a normal girl. Her skin is warm to the touch.
But there's a massive but here, the cost of that warmth. 3 years later, when the first frost finally comes to the south, the little blue ice lizards come out of their burrows. Adara sees them, she remembers her childhood, and she smiles. But she doesn't reach down to touch them. She can't.
No, she can't risk it.
She knows that they are cold and fragile and that the new, pulsing warmth of her human hands would burn them, melt them, and kill them.
She has completely lost her magic. Her alignment with the winter is severed.
So what does this all mean, the fact that she can't touch the lizards anymore? Why end a story of triumph on a note of such tangible loss?
If we connect this back to our central theme, it means that healing isn't just a simple, unalloyed happy ending. Martin's is rejecting the traditional fairy tale conclusion. Healing requires sacrifice. To survive her trauma, to process the terror of the war, and to rejoin the human race as a normal, feeling person, Adara's ice had to melt.
She had to change.
She gained a loving father, she gained empathy, and she gained a future. But she lost her unique, sublime nature. She lost her closest companion, the dragon, and she lost the safe, silent harbor she had built for herself.
It's the tragedy of growing up, isn't it? You are forced to shed the coping mechanisms that kept you alive during your darkest periods, but in doing so, you lose a part of yourself that was profoundly special, even if it was born of pain. And Martin drives this thematic nail home with the final haunting image of the farm revealed right before they fled that night. Yes, the cold pond. When they are walking away from the burning farmhouse in the dark, Adara stops and looks back, searching for the ice dragon's massive body. But there is no giant corpse of flesh and crystal lying in the wheat. There were the three dead fire dragons, their scaly bodies rotting in the heat, and the three dead riders. But where the ice dragon fell, there is only a small, perfectly quiet pool of water, a pond that had never been there before. And the text notes that the water in that pond is very, very cold.
The dragon melted completely away, which brings an incredibly ambiguous, brilliant layer to the entire text. It forces the reader to reconsider the literal reality of everything we just read.
Exactly, and that is the perfect place to leave you, the listener, today. We started this deep dive talking about the genius of George R.R. Martin, the way he uses fantastical elements, dragons, freezing biology, elemental magic, and visceral warfare, not just to build a cool world, but to tell a deeply human story about the painful, necessary, and transactional transition from childhood numbness into adult empathy.
He shows us that the architectures we build in our minds to protect us from what we can't handle are incredibly powerful, but they are also impermanent. They must eventually melt if we are to truly live.
So, as you go about your day, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. Think about that cold, quiet pond left behind in the dirt of the ruined farm. Think about the invisible, powerful nature of a child's psychological defenses. Was the ice dragon ever truly a literal beast of flesh and crystal soaring through the northern sky? Or was it from the very beginning the physical manifestation of a little girl's frozen, profound grief?
That's the real question.
Was it a supernatural psychological shield that absorbed the agonizing fires of reality, allowing her to survive and melting away into nothing only when she was finally ready to feel the warmth of spring?
The story doesn't answer it for us, but the water is there.
The water is there. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.